Hi, this is Dylan Code with California Superbike School. This is a very informal, behind-the-scenes show and tell of our facility. I know you couldn't make it when you're here in Southern California, so I thought I would just do the next best thing. So we're in an area called Cypress Park, and right over there's some hills, and that's where Dodger Stadium is, and then beyond that is downtown LA, just for a frame of reference. And let's come on in and have a look around. So first off, we've got a couple 18-wheelers. We cover them up so that they don't get sun damage during the off season. And let's go in here. Our mechanic staff are in the middle of getting all the 2026s that we just are receiving right now and converting them over to the track. So this is a new bike, presumably. Let's see, yes, this is a brand new bike. So this one's getting transitioned over to track. So it has to get broken in. So it needs a minimum of like 312 miles, and then we do that on the street. Then we bring it in, and then we flip it over into track trim. Let's go ahead and have a look a little further at our trailers. This trailer right here is our student services trailer. And it's for just what you think. It's all the stuff that students would need, and also staff. So we got hospitality and your cappuccino, and this has got all of our plates and coffee, cereal, stuff for the morning. Fridge, printer, computer, lockers for the coaches and students. It's a bit packed in here, but we can see this is the student gear. So you can see we've got helmets for everybody. So the whole idea with the Superbike School is it's a complete arrive and ride experience. Someone can just show up in their street clothes. We supply absolutely everything. So the barrier to entry is basically they just need to have the time and the money, and then we take care of everything else. Back here, we got a bunch of equipment in here, but if you go back here, you can see there's a bunch of leathers. We have about 80 sets of leathers, and then up on the right, you can see boots as well. So this is kind of a Swiss Army knife where we need to have any of the materials or tools that we might need to take care of a person. Then this is our mechanics trailer, and this thing gets packed in like sardines. We'll get 40 motorcycles in here, and then all of our parts, all of our tires. You probably already know this, but our fleet gets 400,000 miles a year. And then some people also bring their own bikes. So the total number of miles on track is a very, very large number. Here's some old helmets that we switched out for new helmets. We're throwing them away. We cut the straps off of them. This bunker holds all of our tires. And obviously with 400,000 miles a year, we end up using a lot of tires. So they're constantly coming in and rotating. Our chief mechanic, Dan. And then this is obviously some of the fleet. So some of these are brand new bikes. They're going to get broken in. Others are actually getting prepped to dispo, to sell. And so they have various different statuses. And right now is a pretty busy period where we're changing everything out. We got parts up here, and we try to basically keep all the parts need to be relevant. In other words, if it's from an earlier generation bike, then we move it out. Luckily, there haven't really been a whole lot of changes in the motorcycles over the last, actually since, let's say, 2019. There have been some updates, of course, but it makes it a little easier for us to stock parts, because you don't want to stock a bunch of parts that end up not being useful. All right, mechanics area more. This is what we call the gear room, and you can guess what's in it. Riding gear. So this is for the coaches, this is for the students, and basically we have to have plenty of gear in case any of it gets worn out, weather damage, or damage from a crash. We need to have all this stuff on tap. We can't wait for it. Order it last minute. We need to be totally prepped and have reserves. This is a bunch of promo that we give our first-time graduates. We pop them in there. Stuff from our partners. and discounts, etc. Just something to send them away with. They put their graduation certificate in. But all our first-time students get that. Okay, helmets, boots. All right, let's go a little further. Like I said, this is behind the scenes, so you're seeing everything. Upstairs is our loft. And we use the loft for record storage. So we go back 7 years with all of our records. And the records include, all the registration, legal forms, etc. And also, if there is any surveys, well, at the end of the school day, people fill out surveys. We save all of those. And we also use this if, let's just say, a customer service issue came up for a school that happened a couple years ago, maybe on social media, or someone said, something about it that could have been better. Well, we'll go in and we'll look in the records, and the records will know exactly who their coach was. Obviously, we're going to know what day it was that they went on, who their coach was, all the interactions they had with their coach. Notes are kept meticulously by each coach while they're coaching throughout the day. So they talk about, or they note how many times they rode with them and how many times they debriefed them, et cetera, et cetera. So we keep all this so that we have really excellent records as far as what occurred in the past. All right, just a bunch of random supplies. And then when we get the bikes, we have to take the brand new parts off, store them, and then put the brand new parts back on when we're done using the bike. And most of the bikes are getting used for 1 year. But this is where they get held temporarily. One other thing that is sort of worthy of mentioning is we survey every student after the end of the day to see how their experience went. And what we do is we tally it all up. So what did they like the most? And we can also find out by, let's just say there's 5 categories. What did they like the most? Then, of course, different things are going to be favorites for different people, but you can also find by default what was the least liked because it just, it didn't get as much likes as the other ones. And that will help us zero in on customer service and see what we can do about improving a system. But we've got about 18 or 20,000 surveys now, and now we've got a really, really good idea of our performance. And then we can look at it over many years, or we can look at it, how are we performing just in this year or even over the last few months. It just gives us a better idea, and the sample size is nice and large now. This is an interesting bike. It was part of our very first fleet in 1980, and I bought it from somebody for $230 many years ago. He said, hey, I have one of your old school bikes. And it just so happens that this happened to be number 1, the very first fleet bike in our very first year in 1980. And I was really happy to be able to get that. It's completely unrestored. We'll probably do something with that at some point in the future. But this is a very important motorcycle for us. All right, let's go up to the office. This is our building. We've been here for probably, I think it's about 23 years or something like that. And we ended up purchasing it, which makes it a lot easier to deal with these pressures, financial pressures. When you have a big amount you have to pay for different things, and obviously one of them is going to be real estate or rental. This is kind of a cool little chart. It shows all the places where we've run schools around the world. So America, Hawaii, even South America, a couple places in Mexico, obviously all throughout Europe, Middle East, South Africa, India. I'm going there next month. Malaysia, Japan, Philippines, Australia, New Zealand, and China. All right, this is the office. And in here, so we've got our office manager, Whitney. Hi, Whitney. And Sammy, she runs the whole place. Deputy Chief Riding Coach, Johnny. And this is how we keep track of all the signups for the year, so that we update that constantly to find out which schools are full and how many more spots do we need to fill. If you look up here, this is going to be our signups for the week. So this is how many signups we have so far this week, 73, which is pretty good. And now we have around 1,729 more spots to fill in order to fill the entire year. And that's always obviously the game. Just like an airline or a hotel, you want to try and get as close to 100% seats filled or occupancy as possible. In here is our chief riding coach and one of the co-owners, Kobe. And he basically runs all of our coaches here in the United States, but also internationally, because we have our foreign branches. So we have to keep track of all of their training progress. It usually takes about 7 years full-time to get a coach basically at like the top tier as far as coaching ability. And of course that's kind of that's not necessarily quantifiable in a whole bunch of different ways, but it's somewhat arbitrary. But when we've got really like a top tier sort of first string coach, it usually takes about 500 days of coaching. Once they're already approved to coach, then we take them even further. So they're never really sort of done with their coaching training. And I think that's a good way of looking at things, particularly because that sort of continuing improvement is something that anyone who's serious about their performance in life would also embrace. So that's just a real quick look around, and like I said, a behind the scenes tour. I wanted you to at least get some sense of what's going on over here, and thanks for watching.